Well, hello there, and welcome back to the second day of From Frustrated to Free 5 Steps to Restore Balance, Focus, and Freedom to Your Health Journey. This is your free 5-day video course. I'm so happy that you decided to go ahead and get started on this repurposing, restoration, quick 5-day journey. I hope you're enjoying yourself. Let's move on to day 2 because we started with personal value. And we talked about in session 1 how important it is to remember who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. Because so often we disassociate our personal value, our self-confidence, our worth, what we're projecting in the world. We disassociate that from the decisions that we're actually making. And the two are very much connected. Now, I want to encourage you, if you need a refresher session, please go back and listen to session 1 again, and then come back here to session 2 and push forward into the second phase of this process. This is From Frustrated to Free session 2. Get out of your head because overthinking is poor thinking. So today I'm going to talk to you about how you can stop overthinking yourself out of your health goals and really capturing that vision that you see in your life, and how overthinking a lot of times keeps us from getting from point A to point B. You know, sometimes I feel like there's someone in my head, but it's not me. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like you are running around on a hamster wheel of thoughts and considerations and other things that are just going through your mind, but somehow they just don't get put together into reasonable focus or action? Well, today I'm going to give you some quick tips on how to get out of your head, which will allow you to refocus your thoughts and then channel your actions that will improve your health. It's so very important that we learn how to get out of our heads. Now, when I say get out of your head, you're probably just thinking about, well, let me take on a different thought process. That's not really what I'm saying. When I say get out of your head, I'm asking you to take a moment and reflect upon how you're thinking about what you're thinking about. So, how you're thinking is impacting what you are doing. Think about this for a minute. We are thinking about things all day long, no matter what your lifestyle is. If you are a single woman who has great career demands and maybe is very active in your extracurricular activities and you have a lot of responsibilities with that, you have a million thoughts coming through your head every day. If you are a working mom with kids and maybe a spouse and other responsibilities with parents and such, maybe you have a million things to balance in the day, and there are thoughts coming in and out. And sometimes when we become overwhelmed in life, let's say if our plate is full, so are our thoughts. Our thoughts become very, very full, and sometimes it becomes too much for us to process at any given time. What's interesting is that if you look at the research, the psychology research about thinking, you would see that a thinking loop can become either positive or negative. So what's a thinking loop? A thinking loop is just a pattern of thought. So this thought comes into my head. Now, what am I doing with it? How am I working through it to get to the end of it? And then what do I do with it from there? Well, I guess you could easily see that a thinking loop could easily become positive. You know, if it's relating to something that you're confident about, that you want to do, you could probably work through it pretty quickly and get on to the end of it and then focus in on the action that maybe needs to take place as a result of that thought. But a thinking loop can also become negative. And a thinking loop becomes negative when we constantly question every single step in the thinking loop. Now, sometimes that thinking loop can become negative if we don't know what to do, or we are wrapped up in emotion about the process. So even with our health journey, a lot of times we don't know what to do. We might want to change our nutritional behavior. We might want to start exercising regularly, but we really don't know where to start. And so we begin to overthink it. Or If we have emotional ties to that thinking loop, let's say you've been on a weight loss journey for a long time and you hit a stumbling block and you gain some weight back. Now you have emotions tied to the process. You may have felt frustrated, belittled, embarrassed. Now the thinking loop is clogged down with those emotions and now it's become a negative loop. When those things start to happen, it's very important to see that we can shift into the overanalyzing process. And when we get into the point of overanalyzing a thinking loop, it creates confusion and not clarity. Our goal in thinking through things is to have some sense of clarity about it. Because isn't that empowering? When we have an issue, we can think through it. And at the end of the thought process, we actually feel empowered to go get it done. Well, this exact process applies to choosing your health behaviors. So we have to focus on how we can get away from this confusion so that we can maintain clarity. And I'm going to talk to you about how to do that in just a moment. The other reason why we've got to get out of our heads is because overthinking leads to fear, failure, frustration, and of course, feeling stuck. You're here on the 5-day free video course. You're here with this frustrated to free process because you feel stuck. And what I've learned from women is that when they're in their heads, when they are confused and not clear, when they are stuck in those negative thought loops, they begin to focus on what they haven't accomplished, failure, focused on what they can't do, fear, and be frustrated and get stuck. So let's talk about how we can get unstuck. I want you to get unstuck because overthinking is often the product of underdoing. Less thinking and more action is what's going to allow us to be successful on this health journey. Less thinking, more action. Sounds simple enough. But for many of us, it is a true challenge. So let's talk about how we are going to clear your headspace. First and foremost, what I want you to do is connect your overthinking to emotions that you can work with. A few slides ago, I talked about how when we get into those negative thinking loops, a lot of times it's because we're thinking about an experience we had before in relationship to a behavior or a choice that we need to make now. And the emotions tied to that behavior are not the greatest. So if you've walked this road before, this health journey road, and you've stumbled with trying to keep your weight down, then you have some special emotions that are attached to that. And believe it or not, that will thrust you into an overthinking pattern. So what I want you to do is, rather than get stuck on fear, frustration, rather than being caught up with anger and disappointment and even embarrassment about what didn't work for you before, I want you to start thinking about those emotions as something that you can actually work with. Let me give you an example. Let's talk about fear for a moment. I think fear is an overwhelming lie in our lives. And until we really get that, until we let that sink down on the inside and become one of our truths, that fear is a lie, it's going to stand between us and that healthful, balanced life that we envision. So how can we work with fear? I'll tell you how I work with fear. I'll give you some truth on my life at this point. Fear is something that I know is truly a lie, but sometimes it rears its ugly head. And there are things that I want to accomplish, big dreams that I have, but I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of not being able to do it as well as I see it being done in my head. And there you go, you're overthinking it. So how do you work with fear? Well, I actually go through a tangible process, a meditative process to help me go with the fear, or rather help the fear go with me, so that I can move myself into a positive space. So what I do is I literally sit and envision that that fear is a cube and it's sitting in the palm of my hand. I'm holding it. So not only am I in control of it, but it has to go where I go. And because it has to go where I go, I have the power over it. It doesn't stop me from going anywhere. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that I might not get a reminder every now and then that it's there. It simply means that I am in control. And if I say we're going over here, then that's where we're going, fear. And so I sit and I visualize holding that cube of fear in my palm and walking forward into whatever it is that I've set myself out to do, regardless of what fear wants to say to me about it. In other words, I took that fear in my hand and I walked forward. And that is how I clear my headspace. And that is how I work with that particular emotion so that I can stop overthinking what it is that I know I need to do for myself. The other thing I want you to think about when you're clearing your headspace is to stop talking about what you're going to do. We are forever in planning mode. And I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but after a while, you can just plan until you're blue in the face. Stop talking about what's going to happen in a week. Well, I'll start it next Monday because I like to start everything on Mondays. It gets me ready to go for the week. No. If you have a new health behavior that you want to take on, start immediately. Act immediately. And don't forget that that first step is only one step of many that will get you to your goal. I think sometimes we become short-sighted in our overthinking as well because we think that even that first step, like if it doesn't get me to my goal, then somehow I failed. No, you are on a journey. You are in a perpetual process of changing, of growing, of healing, of recognizing what you can accomplish in your health. And you have to give yourself the grace to actually get it done and stop being so hypercritical of even that first step. So stop talking and get to work. And that kind of goes along with that third bullet that I have here, which is redirect your thoughts into action immediately. We are not promised even the next second or tomorrow. So what are you waiting for? Why are you sitting around overthinking what you haven't done? If you're here, if you're breathing, if you're capable, if your mind is sharp, let's get going. Let's do it right now. What does that look like? Well, it could mean that today I'm going to replace 3 sodas with water. It could mean that today, instead of smoking a half pack of cigarettes, I'm going to cut that down to a smaller number. It doesn't mean I'm perfect on the first day. It means I'm taking one step to get myself into the action flow immediately. And then when you see yourself doing that, and you go through your thinking loop again about what you're doing, high five yourself on the way around because you've actually progressed forward. Be willing to celebrate yourself and give yourself the encouragement that you need to keep going. Ladies, clearing your headspace is so important when it comes to moving from frustrated to free. I hope you found this second day of my free 5-day video course helpful, insightful, and full of important information and little things that you can do to start getting unstuck. I'm excited tomorrow for you to see session 3. I'm so excited for this. So check back in on your email inbox for session 3. Get to work on steps 1 and 2. Get to work right now, immediately, as I said. And I'm praying the best in life and health for you. I'll see you tomorrow.